Beyond the Fence Line, a podcast brought to you by the Texas Agricultural Land Trust. Created by landowners for landowners, we're proud to play a role in conserving the Texas legacy of wide open spaces.
Welcome back to Beyond the Fence Line. This is Hannah Blankenship, Stewardship Manager for TALT. Thanks for listening in. If you're following along on our social media accounts, you've probably seen some content from our incredible land stewards out and about across the Texas landscape. This is the time of year we are busy visiting all of our easements, but thankfully I have the help of our regional stewards, Brad, Ken, and Clay. Thank you for joining us today. How are y'all doing?
We're good.
Doing well, thank you.
Doing good, Hannah. Glad to be here today.
Awesome. I'm glad to get to sit down and chat with you guys. Each of you play an important role in the continued relationship TALT makes across Texas. Ken, let's start with you. What region do you represent?
I represent the Panhandle, South Plains, and Rolling Plains part of the country. I've been doing it for several years and really enjoy it.
Well, good. How about you, Clay?
I am the steward for the Trans-Pecos area, the Trans-Pecos being comprised of 9 counties west of the Pecos River. However, not exclusive to that, I do drift into the San Angelo area and counties in that region. Thank you.
How about you, Brad?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm based in Rockport, down on the coast, and I'm the Gulf Coast regional steward. My core area would cover, the majority of the coastal counties from the Houston area all the way down to the valley. I also spend quite a bit of time in the South Texas region, kind of south of San Antonio, south of Highway 90, all that deep south brush country. So kind of split my time between those areas.
Thanks, Brad. So for our listeners, if you look at our 12-step process on the website, you'll find that the 12th step is the annual monitoring. And this is where our stewardship team comes in to ensure your conservation goals that you put into the conservation easement are carried out into perpetuity. Our annual meeting also serves as an opportunity for you to discuss questions, concerns, and future plans with our team. So let's dive in. So, Ken, when does the land team first contact a landowner after the easement is signed?
Well, after the easement's signed, as soon as possible, I try to make contact with the people that own the land and lay a groundwork for getting to know them, maybe sitting down with them and visiting even before the monitoring begins, if that's okay with them. But for sure, so that they'll at least know who I am when it comes time to schedule and the monitoring visits. And that way it won't catch them off guard. If they have a new easement, the whole process is going to be a little new to them. So we try to be real helpful and agreeable to a time that would work for them when it comes to the monitoring, and assure them it's not a big high stress deal. It's just a time to visit together and see how things are going. And from our end, it's an opportunity to build a relationship, and we hope to do that so that we can help them anytime they might need something that has to do with their easement or regular old management activities. We don't have any desire to dictate to them how they manage, but if they have some questions about management that we might be able to answer, we could sure help them out there.
Right. I think that's an important point. You guys are very well versed in the ranching community and have some connections to other organizations and help outside of what they might be able to obtain themselves. So I think that's definitely a good point.
Hey, Hannah, let me throw it back to you. So you didn't cover your area and where you're located, and because you're a big part of this process as well.
Okay. Well, I am the stewardship manager for TALT, which I also help with the monitoring. And I am actually located in Ardmore, Oklahoma, but I cover the Central Texas and North Texas region for TALT. So like we said earlier, stewardship is the last step of our process, but it's something that will take place every year in perpetuity. So how are the yearly monitoring visits scheduled, Brad?
Our new physical year will start in April 1st, and typically we'll start queuing that up a month before. I typically start trying to reach out to landowners in my region, or the ones that I'm scheduling to monitor this season. It's kind of a balancing act. Some of these landowners live on the property; they're there every day. Some are
absentee owners. At some point there's properties that we deal directly with the managers instead of the owners. And that's definitely an option when it comes to monitoring as well. If there's a landowner representative that they have approved to be in their stead and conduct these monitoring visits and sign off on the finals, that's definitely sometimes what we deal with. But we get in touch with them and try to schedule out a convenient time that we can meet and spend some time with them. And a lot of times, there's a lot of counties to cover, a lot of traveling, and we try to make it as efficient as possible on our end, but definitely accommodate their schedules, because this is a voluntary meeting, but it's required that we have to get there once a year. So we're trying to make it as easy for the landowner, as comfortable for the landowner to get this conducted.
That's definitely a good point to make, that the landowner themselves don't have to be there. We obviously would like for them to, so we can continue building relationships, but they can have somebody in their place or just send us out there on our own. So these monitoring visits do serve a purpose, but what is it? What are we, quote unquote, monitoring? Clay?
Well, I think the main thing, obviously, the legal part of it is going to be that the terms of the easement are being upheld. I think that's the biggest thing that we're looking for, that the terms have been met. There have not been any violations. Those to me, that's the main points of our visit. And we're not always necessarily, at least from my standpoint, I'm not always necessarily looking for something. I may be quizzing the landowner. Is there something else that you need from us? Is there something we can do for you? I try not to make the monitoring visits like we're the easement police, and we're just looking for something to pin you on, and we're not doing that. Although it is part of our job to search for those things. I try never to make the visit about that. That's something that I'm kind of doing in the background and try to, like Ken had said, establish a relationship with the landowner and maintain that relationship. Cause, we're partners in on this deal. It's not one person working for another. We're partners in on it. So for everybody to follow the terms of the easement is beneficial to both parties.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes when I'm out on, especially some of the hill country properties, especially in April, May timeframe with the blue bonnets and all the wildflowers, I'm just taking pictures and finding some pretty stuff to take pictures of. And the landowner goes, is everything okay? So I think definitely making sure that it's not something to stress about, and because we take a picture, it's not anything to worry about. Sometimes we just find a pretty flower.
I think something to add there is, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure the rest of y'all kind of feel the same way. It's an exciting time of year to be able to see the progress of some of these properties as well. This really doesn't pertain to, monitoring per se, but us, being connected to the land, all of us, in some form or fashion, and being connected to land management, it's good to see, land advancing and management advancing, and seeing, how the landowners are improving this land. And a lot of times, I'll get pictures of stuff that it's a good feeling to see this land progress forward, and know that maybe we had a small part in that with this easement, enabling that landowner to enhance their legacy property.
I agree. Sometimes the written documentation portion of having the monitoring reports isn't just for covering our bases legally. It also does tie into what you just said about management practices and helping the landowner improve their land. You can go back and see years over time how it's been improving. So Ken, what happens if you see something that goes against the conservation easement agreement? What's the process?
Well, we might take pictures of it, and it's it's not something for the land. We don't want it to cause the landowner any angst, because if it just looks like it's something that might need to be documented in relation to the conservation easement, we might take pictures and then look at it later according to the part of the ranch that agricultural building is allowed in, for example, or a residential building. And with the georeference location on those photographs, we can get a bearing on where they lie within those areas, and we can document that. If there's any perceived discrepancy about the easement, then we can talk about it later. The monitoring visit isn't the time to do that. And besides that, until we have that easement in our hand and review it one more time and make sure everything's cool, there's no need to talk about it. It's not like we're trying to hide something from anybody. It's just that we want it to work for the landowner. We want the landowner to be successful. And we're, like Clay said, we're not the conservation easement police. We're just, we're in this together. And so we just want to make sure all of our I's are dotted and T's crossed for the protection of the landowner and for the land trust as well.
That was very well said. I agree. So when the landowners are consulting with TALT about a conservation easement, could they opt out of monitoring, Brad?
No, ma'am. It's a required part in the easement agreement. That is what TALT is tasked with in being the easement holder. We're tasked with upholding the terms of the agreement, and part of that is an annual visit to the property, just to review that those, like Clay said earlier, that those terms of that agreement are being upheld. That is part of our mission as a holder and part of our job. So no, it is not it's not optional, but we try to make it as easy as possible for the landowners.
Yeah, we did mention earlier that the landowner themselves don't have to be present for the monitoring visit. We could also go out there if they gave us permission, we could go out there ourselves, but the monitoring definitely does need to happen every calendar year. A common misconception is that putting your land under a conservation easement means that you give up the rights to manage the land day by day. What would you say as the response to that, Clay?
Well, I would have to say that's, we're certainly not from TALT's perspective. We're not concerned with how you manage day to day, but we are not going to have a hand in your day to day management. It's your ranch, or it's your property. You know it better, certainly better than we do. And one of our principles is to be partners with people who are concerned or like-minded, like we are in conservation of our private lands. We want to be partners with somebody who is going to protect the land the same way we would. So we feel like there's no reason for us to have a hand in anything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
That was very well put. Ken, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have even. Do you have any examples of how the role of being a steward fits into the landowner's management and how you've helped management in the past on easement?
Well, I guess it's varied. It's usually not very wide-ranging. It might be something as simple as helping somebody find another manager. Their manager just left, or helping them find a contractor for so and so for such and such activity or project, and they might want to build a tank, stock tank. I can aim them towards NRCS, for example, and see if there's some cost share that might help them. Or the same kind of deal with fencing. So those are things that just come up in the course of conversation as we ride around and look. A lot of people don't visit that well sitting across the table from each other, but if you're looking through the windshield traveling around the country, it's easier for me to visit with somebody, and I think they probably find it's easier to visit with me. And it's just a good time to be lighthearted and talk about what's going on and help them in any way they can with information or advice should they ask for it.
Yeah, well, I think that's pretty invaluable. Speaking from experience on looking for recommendations for contractors, you never know what you're going to get sometimes. So does anybody have any stories or examples or funny instances that happened on monitoring visits that you'd like to share?
I do have one, and I think it kind of speaks to, for lack of a better term, how common we are just as stewards and as representatives of TALT. And I mean common in a good way. I had to meet with the manager. The landowner could not be there, and I had to meet with the manager. He was brand new. I'd never met him before. And all they told him was that the steward for Texas Ag Land Trust was going to meet him at such and such day and time. And I have it's an '01 Dodge diesel pickup. It's got straight pipes and it's loud, but I use it to tour those rough ranches because some of them are pretty rough. And so I met the young man and we're touring, and we get to know each other, just like Ken said, a little windshield time and make everybody comfortable. And he looked at me and he said, when they told me I was expecting the steward from Texas Ag Land Trust, he said, I was expecting a guy in a suit and a Lexus. And when I heard and saw that Dodge coming around the corner, he thought, I bet I can handle this guy. So, and that's what I mean by commonness. We're just people just like everybody else. And we're not there to try to make your day tough or hold you to the fire on anything. We're just regular people doing a job like you are. And at the end of the day, we want to be friends and help you as much as we can. Because, the way the easement is, we're going to be doing this together for forever. So we just will get along.
I agree.
That Clay raises a good point there. There's not really a reason not to. We're both on the same page. These folks, it may not necessarily be the case with the manager, but the landowner entered into this conservation easement because he had a concern about the country being developed into a state that wouldn't make it available for agriculture. And so we're just helping facilitate that. And like Clay said, it's a from now on kind of deal. So they know that going into it, and we're glad to serve in that function, just to make sure this continues to be an option for landowners.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think Ken's exactly right, and kind of bouncing off of Clay's story there. So, and Clay has some pretty rough country out west. A lot of the places I go and see, it's pretty tame compared to that. But I've got one that I covered the last 2 years. It's about halfway between myself and Clay's country out there, and really, really remote part of Texas. Really, probably the most beautiful, rugged country that I get a chance to visit in Texas. And I just finished the monitoring on that one for the second time, and it's pretty tough. The landowner lives in San Antonio and doesn't get to the ranch all that much, and scheduling a time that works because it's so remote, and it's pretty tough getting them scheduled out. Well, we got it worked out, and I was planning on being out there about 9 a.m. and get our monitoring done, because it's, when you leave the blacktop, it's about an hour and 30 minutes to the ranch house down some pretty rough roads and way back in. And anyway, I was making my way in there on this monitoring visit, and I made it about 25 miles and broke a brake line on my truck and completely lost my brakes in some pretty rough country, and was blessed and lucky that it happened in a good stretch of road where I could get stopped. But the other thing is that this whole stretch into this ranch, there's absolutely no phone service whatsoever. Just so happens to be there's a state park along the way into there. And I made my way into that state park, and there's a little ranger station that's typically not manned at all, but has a Wi-Fi signal, and got into the Wi-Fi signal, let the landowner know that I wasn't going to be on time, and had a major problem. He immediately got back to me, threw his tools together, as much as he could put together, and started making his way out of the ranch. And we got it patched up. He hauled me back into the ranch. At this point, we've and this is the first time I've met. So there's two entities on this ranch. I'd met the other brother before, but this is the first time I met this fella. So talking about first impressions when you show up, he might have been expecting that guy in the Lexus as well. But at the end of the day, he helped me put my truck back together. A little bit of baling wire, a couple mesquite thorns and some pliers, and we pitched her off and got her refilled and got the monitoring done. Had a lot of laughs. Feel like we've come a long way in getting more comfortable with one another after this experience, and I think we're both looking forward to next year at this point, and hopefully it goes a little smoother.
Well, that'll do it. I also have one of my favorite easements to go monitor. I went last year. It was actually towards the end of August, just because we had trouble getting it scheduled. But afterwards, the landowner took me out to lunch, and then on the way to lunch, stopped at the grocery store. And I was following the landowner, so I pulled in and was wondering what the heck was going on. But they stopped at the grocery store and went in and bought me some cantaloupes, because this county that the easement is in is famous for cantaloupes. And so he bought me some, and I thought it was a very nice gesture, and took it home and shared it with my family. And definitely one of my favorite easements to monitor, and appreciated the kind gesture.
I think, one little topic we haven't covered is generational turnover. And I think we're starting to see that at this point. Some of these easements were done 15 years ago. You're seeing some new generations that are involved with these properties. And I think that's also going to be a big part from the stewardship side and the monitoring side is, starting to build relationships with these next generations. And hopefully the previous generation has done a good job in explaining these easements and how they work, the structure of them, and maybe, instilling some of that same respect that they had, the original generation had, and why they put it in. But I think it's gonna fall on us some as well as the monitors and the stewards to build these relationships and help these new generations understand going in, and kind of help mitigate some of those potential obstacles in the future that we had talked about earlier. Up to date, as far as I'm aware, we've never had any compliance issues with easements, and we want to do our best to make sure that we never do have any issues in the future. So I think I just wanted to bring that up too. That's
a good point. And you're right. We have not had any issues with any of our easements. And I think that is a big kudos to all of you with all of your building relationships with landowners that you guys have done. It's definitely worked out so far. We also have a packet that we put together for what you were talking about, the generational turnover, with making sure they have everything they need in regards to the easement document, and contacting all of us and making it a smooth transition as possible for them to help that out. Thank you for that, Brad. So at the end of the day, you as landowners have created the parameters that you want to guide the use of your land forever. Our job as stewards and monitors for TALT is to make sure that those expectations are met and protected. Thank you guys for joining us on Beyond the Fence Line.
Beyond the Fence Line is brought to you by the Texas Agricultural Land Trust, dedicated to conserving the Texas heritage of agricultural lands, wildlife habitats, and natural resources. Find out more at txaglandtrust.org.